You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo or honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker out there, you can try spicy ghost pepper, only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. Listen, I'm going to dare you to do it. I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs that you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and then grab a few more napkins and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's.
What up, Cal fans? We are back with another episode of Golden Bearcast, a proud partner of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. It is a little bit before bowl season, and we are going to do a bit of a season recap pod. We're going to talk about SMU. We'll dive into some off-season news. We'll discuss the ever terrifying transfer portal. Some breaking news this evening. And we'll actually do some players of the year. I didn't even tell Rob we're going to do that, but that's what we're going to do. And then we'll look ahead towards the bowl game against UNLV and what we expect to happen next Wednesday in the LA Bowl, which is hosted by Gronk, who Rob is hoping develops a bit of a taste for Malort.
Could happen. He signed actually the LA Bulls Twitter handle printed out one of Don's tweets, like the guy who created the "you lost to the woke agenda" meme. They printed it out and Gronk signed it and then held it up in a picture. And so we're hoping that somehow gets to Don. We're trying to make that happen.
Wow.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. They tweeted out something about, the Adam Silver, it's the Adam Silver meme, get ready to learn Chinese, buddy, that meme. But they made it into Oski's face and it says, get ready to learn Calgorhythm LA. They're fully embracing all of our culture.
Where is the Calgorhythm at this point, Rob?
What do you mean?
What's happening with it? Is it still alive?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Is it a simmering burn?
No, I'm in the group chats with the guys. They're they're throwing ideas for what they want to do content wise for the bowl game. They put out the Fernando music video earlier this week, or it was early. Was it early? It was late last week. They put out that Fernando music video, and yeah, they're keeping it going strong. I think it's become a thing now, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. The guys they'll be back next year with just the meme wars that they do with other fan bases. It's going to be pretty good. I mean, this was just the inaugural season for them, so they're only going to be better as they get more seasoned.
This is just the beginning, you're saying?
It is just the beginning, yeah.
Goodness. Will the future be on what was formerly known as Twitter, or is
That's
it going to be on Blue Sky?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I don't even know what next week holds. I don't even know what tomorrow holds. We'll find that out sooner or later. But,
good thing this isn't a prediction pod.
Thank God it isn't, because we are not good predictors whatsoever. I'm gonna text that to Trace actually later. I mean, I know what he's gonna respond with. He's going to be like, I don't know why you guys keep asking me to come back and predict things when I suck at this. But regardless, it's all for fun. We're all doing this. We can't just sulk at the negatives and the lows. We gotta find joy somehow.
Oh, I got my prediction for next year. I'm ready to go. It's easy. I'm only predicting 6-6 for the rest of time.
Yeah, so you can either be pleasantly surprised or slightly disappointed.
Yeah.
Sounds
nothing wrong with that. You heard it here first. 6-6 next season. Get ready, everybody.
God, it's December 9th, and you're already putting out a prediction for next season, which doesn't start until August of next year.
That's true. Okay, well, let's go to SMU, because I do want to talk about this. I understand that, so it was last minute. Mendoza's sick and he gets held out of the game.
Yeah.
And the game is basically over, before halftime.
Yeah, just about.
Just about. I think there were bits, like moments where you're like, okay, Cal could make a game of this, and then it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think the SMU game, for me personally, was like why I couldn't get that excited about the big game.
But wait, I'm confused because the big game was before SMU.
Exactly. But on the podcast afterwards, I was having a really hard time understanding why I felt a little bit more down with the outcome of that game, even though we had
I track what you're saying.
So I'm just saying that what the SMU ended up becoming was what my fear was with what the Stanford game in my mind was, which was sort of a flash in the pan for a team that, at the end of the day, just I hate even saying this out loud, but it just, we're a 500 team. At that point in time, we just we were who we were.
Yeah.
But it's still surprising, I think, even in some of those moments, to see a Wilcox team completely blown out like that. We just haven't been totally used to it. But I think that outcome, like if I'd gone into that game, it's really hard because like who knows if Mendoza's in, if it's just too hard to play that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot there. Like, where do we even want to start? Chandler Rogers playing and not really looking the part, and then him getting hurt, and who is
CJ.
it? CJ coming in, and I mean the offense just it's just sort of the same routine. Jaden's in the game looking super pedestrian because he's running behind no O-line. I mean, it's just it even though we were missing pieces, it's felt like a greater narrative that was attached to this season of frustration, where even though they were like these big things that you could say, oh yeah, I'm going to excuse this, I'm going to excuse that, which makes total sense. And I don't blame anybody that does, but there still were all of the same things. And one of the biggest questions that I have is my frustration, as much as it does exist on the offensive side of the football. And we'll talk about that. And I think I texted you this, Rob, but like, for me, I think I have as much frustration with the defense and how slow we have started the last 4 games of the season.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I mean, we start with the defense, which is, I agree. I think, when you watch the games, we play very soft on the back end. We're not as aggressive as we were early on in the season. Whether that's a circumstance or causation by having been burned early on in the season and them trying to alleviate that to a certain degree. Like if I'm trying to just play like, how can I explain what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Right? Is that you saw what happened in the Miami game, you saw what happened in the Pitt game, you saw what happened. And I think having a defense that's too aggressive without an offense that's able to hold the ball and dictate the time of possession burned guys out. And that was especially the case within the front 7. So they're playing a little bit light in that regard to preserve these guys probably into the second half of the game. And then being able to push from there. That's my only like real explanation of what I'm seeing, and maybe that's the game plan. Who knows? I'm not in those meetings, but like, just not having enough bodies up front, I think was like a big issue. Like, Ryan McCullough being out for a few games, like threw off the rotation. David Reese just like didn't look like his last 6 games of last season, like at all this year. Maybe the last few games, maybe a couple times, but not from a season long as we expected him to be. Carlton has been solid, but there were moments where Carlton might over pursue guys into the backfield and leave the edge overexposed. And so, Yeah, and then I think that's why they played back off, particularly with the back end guys, so that everything stayed in front of them and nothing got past them.
Who was on the outside again that was supposed to set the edge, and then we gave up? It was the Pitt game.
That was
right?
Nate Burrell.
Was it? It must have been the Chargers game that I was watching. Was it the Chargers game or Niners?
It was the what? Are you talking about? Well, I mean, it happened last night where we over pursued and got behind Mahomes, and Mahomes stepped up, and then he threw to Kelsey to convert that third down to give them the field goal to win the game.
No, there was a. What game was it? Maybe it was the Rams game, Rams Buffalo game,
Just
where
another over pursuit.
no, it's actually they did it perfectly.
Oh, they did perfectly.
Yeah,
Okay.
they did it perfectly where they set the edge and they forced whoever it was. It's definitely
inside.
mobile. It was a mobile quarterback, so I'm assuming it had to have been
Who knows?
had to have been Josh Allen, right? But forced him inside, and I was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look. Yeah. Now you know. Now you know. Yeah, I mean that's the only way I can explain like what I saw the last 4 games, particularly on the defensive end. I think a part of it also, like, is Cade not being there.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this for a couple pods now. Like, you could definitely see the void that his talent and his ability leaves on the field. And it's fine when we need a guy to sub in for a couple of snaps here and there, because you can figure out points in the game or snaps in the game to give him that time off. But for a whole game, totally changes how you can run a defense. So yeah, it was just a perfect storm of like all of the issues that we had all year culminating in like a single game. Subpar offensive line play, inability to play time of possession, no real like Nando just being Nando and him not being there, and his ability to make something out of nothing with his arm. The defensive line just not being able to get any push into the backfields, being able to stop on third down, all of that. And it just all culminated in this game.
So fun.
Yeah. Yeah. As the game progressed, I was just kind of like, this is kind of what I expected this game to be once I found out Nando wasn't playing.
I mean, I wasn't mad.
No.
Right? It's a holiday weekend. Give everybody some time back. I'm like, it's all right. But it was surprising how much of, I think if you wanted to understand what happened to Cal football this year, as you mentioned, you'd actually be able to see a lot of it in that game, despite some bigger missing pieces.
I mean, we just flat out lost to the better team. And that's ultimately what that game ended up being.
But I mean, it's so fascinating, I think, even thinking about SMU, because they were G5 last year. And you look at where we were at with the Mountain West teams this season, and I mean, it's not even close compared to like the talent level they've been able to bring in. And
yeah, I mean, NIL like war chests really help. Being able to bring in like 7 guys from Miami on the defensive like front 7, like, yeah, it's gonna work. So that's where we are. I mean, the season ends. We're still going to a bowl game next week, but I don't know if I don't know if this game left a sour taste in my mouth more so than just that's kind of, if you told me how the first 11 games went and then we're playing SMU, ranked SMU as the final game, that might be the script I draw up of like, that's how the final game of the season goes.
I think we all predicted a loss against SMU.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't absolutely no way could have predicted how good SMU would have been this year.
Yeah. But
yeah, it was very ho-hum finish.
Yeah.
And then followed up by some disappointing recruiting news.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do we want to talk about that? What do we want to talk about next? I feel like we don't need to like linger on SMU any further.
Linger.
Yeah. But what's the next thing we want to talk about? There's so much to talk about.
Let's go OC. We're not going to talk about an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Works for me. All right. Let's talk about offensive coordinator. So on National Signing Day, or I think it was the day before National Signing Day, actually, Trace Travers. Sorry, Trace. Travers family head coach Justin Wilcox announced Tuesday there will be a change in leadership to the offensive staff. The football program has initiated a national search to identify a new offensive coordinator. Specific roles for existing staff have yet to be determined. So the wording with that, and then Wilcox kind of talked about it, was, you know, there are paths to like Blesh staying as offensive line coach and other coaches staying here. They were only looking at the offensive coordinator position as of right now. And then yesterday, I think, was the first tweet that went out about Brian Harsin emerging as a candidate for the offensive coordinator role. And then today, ESPN, I believe, and CBS saying that, you know, Brian Harsin is expected to be the offensive coordinator at Cal. So
247 actually
was it 247?
Well, I noted it was people that you mentioned, and everybody else said Cal is set, and then 247 was like, no, this is done.
Yeah, I think the wording just is that you leave it like that until the official announcement is made. Like, you can't say it's done until it's actually from the official source.
Yeah.
So that's the only difference. But I this feels like a timing of the announcement thing more than like they're still drumming through contract details.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ties here are that Harsin and Wilcox coached together at Boise State. Harsin was the head coach at Boise State for a while, not with Justin together. And then he was the offensive coordinator under Coach Peterson. And then he took on the Auburn job for a couple of years and then was fired after Auburn said that they were going to retain him. There's a bunch of reasons why there was a scandal that was, I don't know, either debunked or not debunked. There's so many like conflicting stories regarding that, so I'm not going to touch that. There were questions about his vaccination status, and I think that's actually what led to Auburn letting him go, is what they kind of say. Auburn never really said why they fired him. And then there was also an investigation with him and players and the culture at Auburn. But then that's also half and half. Like, half the players are like, he's like one of the best coaches ever. The other half is like, I don't like this man. So take your pick. And then he's been just collecting checks from Auburn for the last 2 years. He said that he wanted a break from football. You know, he talked about like being able to go watch like his son play and so on, and did that. And then now he is should be the offensive coordinator at Cal.
I think he had a direct quote saying, him to Chris Peterson, saying, wouldn't it be great if I could just take a couple years off of football, be paid, and then come back with like a fresh perspective and have the benefit of being able to step away from the game? And Chris Peterson goes, yeah, that's called being fired.
That's great. That's great.
Well, Rob, let's start with your thoughts.
Initially, uninspiring is the word that keeps coming back to me. It's another one of those, like, we didn't really think outside the box. It was just a coach that was at home resting, not really like a fire guy who's gonna like spark recruiting or anything of that sort as of right now. So that's about it. I have
so much energy.
I mean, that's just kind of how I feel. Like, it's just like, it's a retread hire, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm not excited about it. I'm not like too down about it because he does have at least a floor of ability as an offensive coordinator, but it's not like something that can, just spark something. Like, I think at Auburn, his S&P plus offenses were like top 80. So it was like 82, 84.
No, higher than that.
Was that higher?
Never worse than 65, I believe.
On S&P plus? Maybe it was EPA. There was another ranking that had him at like 80th to 84th. Maybe it was EPA. But yeah, so it's like those are good offenses, but they're not like great offenses. I think his averages were like 26, I think, points per game one year at Auburn, and then the next year was like 28. It was like somewhere around there in like the mid 20s. So yeah, I think it's just uninspiring. Like, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Well then, you and I are at very opposite sides of
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
As you might imagine, as somebody that just got to celebrate the Willie Adames signing at the Giants, well,
Congratulations.
hopefully pending physical, I'm trying to balance myself in saying, do I always react to these things optimistically? But I have noticed this throughout our friendship that I am far more likely to like a retread hire than you are. And I think it's one of the things that we disagree on probably the most. As the basketball search went on before the before our latest hire, but like as the basketball search, like the post Mark Fox era was going on, I constantly would throw out names. You say, oh, another retread, and then you would always go for these sort of young and up and coming hires. And I think that and it's all bias to me because like they both work and they both fail. And I don't know the percentages of, how many retread hires fail versus how many of those are up and coming, succeed and fail. And I'm sure somebody out there can do that if they want to take that time. But there's a lot that I like with this one. And I think the thing is like when Wilcox hired Spav and we were going through that search and the names that were out there, we were going for the young and up and coming hire. And we were also going for somebody that could fire up recruiting. But what ended up happening is like we ended up going for Spavital and it didn't work out. So and now I think if you look at it, what is this, our fourth offensive coordinator in 5 years or something crazy like that?
4 and 4.
4 and 4. Didn't Musgrave get 2 seasons?
Yeah, that's why it's 4 and 4.
Okay. Goodness.
Otherwise, it'd be 5 and 7.
5 and 7. I mean, still bad, right? So it's rotating door. And I think at this point, Wilcox is probably saying, well, one, like what talent is out there right now? Young, up and coming, offensive mind, available that would want to come to Cal. And I do think that when we looked at it and talked about it, we're like the names that were out there during the Spav hire era, if you will, there were a lot more options. There's passing game coordinator from UCLA. There was the passing game or offense coordinator from Oregon State. Like all these things were kind of like a lot of different names were out there and happening that were a little bit more in line with that. And, behind the paywall and Rivals, like you could ultimately find out who those people were. And so that was my gut sense then. And then now my gut sense is that, it's just a bit different. But I say all that, I think if this isn't Musgrave, right? Musgrave was the most ludicrous, the retread of all retreads. Somebody that had been, not even in the college game, in the NFL game, and maybe was represented some level of difference from that perspective. But in my mind, Rob, like I think if Harsin didn't have the baggage of the vaccination stuff attached to him, he would have been hired at Cal 3 years ago. Maybe even, I don't know if the Musgrave Harsin timeline overlapped, but like I know there were rumors.
Well, he was the head coach at Boise at the time.
No, so it wouldn't have been that. So then it, yeah.
And then he
so
was, it would have been after
the Spav.
After Spav. Yeah, after Spav.
Yeah. So like that, because like his name came up, and I remember then like it was still too politically charged for whatever reason, and like now who gives a shit? Like, look, I understand. Like, there's probably out there a lot of people that are like still looking at people that got vaccinated or didn't get vaccinated and hold some sort of opinion. But like from my perspective, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like it's water under the bridge at this point. You did what you did, right? And I just think those things, like I'm at a point in my life where I'm not gonna necessarily say that like Cal shouldn't hire somebody because they held a stance that I didn't agree with 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whenever that was. So But I do really believe that. I think that like a lot of the noise, there was a lot of baggage, and it sort of felt like this fit that could happen, and it wasn't going to happen because there was all this baggage attached to it. And I actually think like now Wilcox doesn't have the ability of taking the chance on a young offensive coordinator for two reasons. One, if it doesn't work out, his job is on the line. I think he's probably let go. The second is if that offensive coordinator comes up, does really well, and gets poached for a new job, then we're sort of resetting again. And it just sort of becomes this theme of like, yeah, we're constantly resetting. And what Harsin does and establishes a really solid floor, S&P plus at Boise, whether you want to attribute that to Chris Peterson or Kellen Moore or to him, regardless, his offenses were constantly in the 40 plus range of S&P plus. And then he moved over to Auburn. And I believe it was like basically no worse than 60th in the country. And if you take that as the floor, I mean, that's kind of what we needed. We have to solve the things on the defensive side of the football. But the other piece I like, and this is even more controversial from anything that I've already said, is that I think there's two other reasons why I really like him as a candidate. One, he has previous head coaching experience. So if you want Blesh to stay on board, and I'm not going to say that he is going to stay on board, but if he were to stay on board and, move back to the offensive line position, I would bet he's going to want to learn from someone that's been a head coach and has a pedigree, and not somebody that's like younger than him and coming up. So I think there's like maybe some politics at play there. And then the second is, let's say we go and have another mediocre season next year, and now you're really thinking about, hey, we need to make a change at our head coaching position. Harsin gives you a pretty solid head coaching candidate that could actually be your backfill, because right now I don't see anybody on staff that you would say, hey, this person is an up and comer, like this would be our head coach taking over. And the realistic, like being very realistic here, is with where Cal is at and the money that we might be owing in order to make a potential change, you may need to bring in like to keep somebody in house. So yeah, I think that's like, I understand why that's a controversial opinion, but I look at these as all big pluses in sort of the why would you bring in somebody like this now? Good luck picking which one of those you want to start with, but yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts.
It's funny because like we talk about this and we're like opposite ends of the spectrum. Like your points on like one, like keeping the floor in the program. For me, I'm the exact opposite. I'm thinking if he doesn't succeed next year, he's out the door anyways. Why would you want a guy that keeps the floor up and not someone that can bust through the ceiling? Like that's the type of home run hire I think you would want going into next year versus maintaining a status quo of an offense. So that's why I'm like, if we score 26 to 28 points a game next year, I think we're sitting at like 6-6, 7-5 again. Like
my prediction's already coming true.
Yeah, but like I think we need to be scoring more. Like we definitely do. But that's like a thing of under the Justin Wilcox tenure. It's just we just don't have offenses that score that much. And I think that's also been his biggest gripe, which is like, you see it in the presser. He's like, we need to be scoring touchdowns in the end, like in the red zone. Like he knows that his team needs to be scoring more. And for him to go to a hire that I think keeps the floor from going out, for me, I think it's the wrong move. One of us is going to be wrong come next year. So like, I don't mind this because it's a win-win as a fan. And we're just having this discussion. So like, and then the second thing is like, the coaching and hire thing, I'm like, I get it from like a structural standpoint, but I'm like, if as a fan, I'd be like, if Wilcox is out the door, I want a fresh start. Like, I don't want anyone that has any ties to Wilcox, any ties to the Peterson tree. Like, I want like full go, because I see what Oregon did with the Dan Lanning hire, and I know it's not like for like, right? But I want that type of guy. Like, I want to bring in a coordinator who is at a program who's won something in the last 5 years, brings in that type of culture here and tries to make something of himself with that fire. Like, dude, the Dan Lanning video of like him doing the Pavlov experiment with the House of Pain stuff, I was like, this is incredible. You're bringing psychology into your own players and telling them you're doing a psych experiment on them, like, and then just pumping them up and just totally transforming that culture in that place. and just energizing all of it. Like that's the kind of coach I want. And I think that the style that Wilcox has in building a program is a good one if it's a place that can support him. And that's like the concern you and I have always had, right? Is that we fire Wilcox, he goes somewhere else as a head coach, and he succeeds because he has the support system that's there for him. I think his style of coaching and his style of building a culture and even his own personality, just being not really in front of the cameras, not being the brand of the program, right? Not being the face to like draw guys in from a public and outward facing standpoint is like a big like 2000s type of head coach persona, like the big Bill Belichick, the Jeff Tedford, like the Chip Kellys, like it, or the Mark Helfriches, like that style of coaches, right? They don't have the Twitter account, they're not out there, they're not saying outlandish things. But I think now with the transfer portal, with the constant turn of players, and just how the recruiting cycle works with NIL, I think you need a more energizing head coach. I think you need that type of person. So that's why I think if we do move on with Wilcox, that's total big tangent, that's the type of hire I would want to go with. I would want to veer us in that direction to keep up with the modern times. In terms of Harsin as a football coach, I don't have any. For me, I don't think my biases come from any of the off the field scandals that have occurred. Because the state of California, I don't think there's like a waiver now. If you didn't get your vaccine, you just sign it, and it's like it's fine. Like there's not going to be a hindrance to like him if he is not vaccinated, like to getting a job. Like it's beyond that point now, as you said. So like for me, that's all. It's all done and dusted. But the issues I have is like some of the cultural things that have happened, and like just if we're going to look at some of the football stuff, hopefully the cultural stuff is, I'll speak on that first. Hopefully the cultural stuff alleviated because Wilcox is the head coach here. He's coming into this and all he has to do is run an offense. Fingers crossed that's the case. The second thing that I'm very much worried about right now, biggest worry, is watching Bo Nix's progression and how he played to becoming a national football meme for 2 years at Auburn before he goes to Oregon and then plays himself into being, or Dillingham and Will Stein basically turn him into a number one draft or a first round draft pick. Like he had the talent to do that. But the fact that he became this college football meme for 2 years, like, I'm kind of nervous letting him, be the offensive coordinator for Nando. That's where I'm kind of like, oh boy, I'm kind of scared. We need to protect Nando at all costs. I think all Cal fans agree. So that's like one of my biggest, one of my biggest worries, like on the field from a production standpoint. And then, but we don't know what the staff looks like. Like, I'm not going to judge this until we figure out who's staying, who's leaving, what our roster looks like. Like, I think all of that needs to be considered before you make this. Like, if he comes in and he like lights the freaking transfer portal on fire and we like bring in just the top tier guys in the transfer portal and our offense is like totally revamped come, whenever spring ball is, what, like, I'll be like, okay, yeah, I guess it was the right hire. Like, I guess there is optimism for it to turn around. But like, that's why I'm going to withhold judgment on the hiring until all of that plays out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think a couple things. One, there's a really interesting experiment that we won't have a lot of time to discuss. But I just think that when you talk about the going all the way back to what you mentioned at the beginning with Wilcox and the hire and trying to break through that ceiling. I mean, I was basically making the same case for Farhan Zaidi with the Giants that, if you're a lame duck and this is your last season, why not make the big move at the deadline to try and break through? Because your job's on the line. Because if you don't, you're going to get let go. Right? And he didn't sell and he didn't add. And what ended up happening is, even if the Giants had added they weren't likely to hang with the Padres. And so that might have been the right decision not to add. But it's always kind of surprising because you're like, take the shot. And I think that's what you're saying. It's like, take the shot because
you're one strike away. You're one strike away from being out. Why are you watching for a ball?
Yeah, exactly. And so I see that very much just through the lens of baseball. The second piece that you talked about around like the coaching searches and Lanning, and I, of course, like I love Dan Lanning. I told all the Oregon guys, like I'll be rooting for you guys all the rest of the season, as long as Dan Lanning is your head coach, and as long as you're not playing Cal or I was rooting for Wisconsin, so that was fun. But I think that even in the best searches, whether I'll go back to baseball, I'm just going to the things that I know, but whether you go to the Lanning search, who was Oregon considering in their coaching search? Well, they went with people that they were, familiar with, had ties to the program. They went with people that are external, right? They had this big group that was in the consideration set, and they made that hire. The Giants, the same thing. Alyssa Naskin got an interview. Our bench coach Kai Correa got an interview. We went internal first, and then we went external. If you look at what Buster Posey has done, he's gone internal first, and then he goes external. I think that you still have to have the internal candidates. And I think like my concern right now is there just aren't enough internal candidates at Cal, so that the only option would be going external. And if the only option is going external, then it puts you in a position of panic because you don't really have anybody else in position to give you that quote unquote floor. And what that could mean is you end up missing, and it really sets you on an even worse path. But I agree. Like, we're not going to know this. It's all hypothetical. And, but that's sort of why I look at that and say, bring in somebody that at least there's one person in the building you look at. And I felt the same way with Spav. It's like you bring him in the building and at least you have one person that you're like, okay, hey, if we strike lightning in the bottle and we have a 9-3 season, and then pick your team from that Big Ten or SEC comes around and says, hey, Justin, we want to give you true institutional support and a new role. And he says, you know what, I've done my thing at Cal, and moves on, or what have you, so that you have somebody there where the program isn't forced to panic as they're trying to find somebody. And not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that having people in the building is only a plus when you're put in that position. But alas, I don't know from a recruiting perspective. It's also such an interesting point because do you go for the coach that's going to light the world on fire through the portal and bring in a bunch of new talent, or do you bring in the coach that is an excellent, has an excellent ability of coaching up players? Like, I honestly think that the players are in the building from a skill position standpoint. For this offense to take the next step, I said skill position because there's clearly a need to add an O-line. But from a skill position perspective, obviously, we're going to talk about the portal in a second, and we lost one wide receiver tonight potentially. But from a skill position perspective, I think Cal just needs somebody in there that, we're red zone execution away from basically being 8-4 or 9-3 and breaking through that ceiling. And to be fair, Rob, you were kind of making that argument for most of this season.
I am. I was. But I think the thing that you're also not talking about, which is if you bring in an offensive coordinator and then you let your assistants go to let the coordinator bring in his guys to coach the positions in the way that he wants them to be coached, then the fact is we're not guaranteed the skill position players that we're banking on to produce for us next year to be here. You're saying we're good at skill positions, but that's not a guarantee if we make a change at wide receiver coach or if we make a change at running backs coach.
But don't you think there's a level of continuity there where it's if I'm going to bring somebody from the outside and make a big change, I'm maybe saying at that point, look, I really do think if you're going to bring in a 25 or 32-year-old, 33-year-old, however old, young, innovative offensive coordinator that's going to do something completely different from what you were doing before blushes out, right? You're talking about that turmoil and changeover because you're going to change your identity. But what we're not saying that Harson's going to come in and bring in a whole new set of coaches. He may, but there's continuity that exists there that I think says, hey, like Toller and these others, like maybe they're in a position where we're saying we just want a different vision at the top. We want to keep, as Wilcox said himself, we have a bunch of coaches on the offensive side of the football that are excellent coaches. I don't think he says that if they're planning to turn all of that over.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something we don't know, right? I'm just playing devil's advocate to your point here right now, which is like we can't assume that we'll have the same skill position players next year, like much like the next story, which is one of our most prolific wide receivers already entering the portal, like with this new era of the transfer portal plus an offensive coordinator change, if they feel like they won't fit in this offense, like they're going to find another place.
Yeah.
And if Harsin does come in and is like, I'm going to make a change at wide receiver coach, I'm going to make a change at O-line coach, I'm going to make a change at, running backs coach, then most of those guys are only there because of their relationship with the coaching like system, right? Like with their position coach and the offensive coordinator. So if they don't feel that, then they're out the door too. Like there's other places that they probably have relationships with, like from prior recruiting years. So that's why I'm like, yeah, we could say that. Like that's the only position, or there's some positions that we might not need him to be like on fire with. But like realistically, if all of those changes were to be made, then he does need to be able to recruit across the board and not just one specific position.
Yep. Okay. Let's take a break. And then we'll move into the portal. Welcome back. We need a very big... Rob, can we do a background sound of the portal giveth and the portal taketh away?
Like a football god voice, like a booming voice.
Yeah.
The heavens open up and a football with a mouth speaks. Yeah. So the portal taketh away today. Well, it's taken a few. I mean, mostly because we haven't brought anyone in from the portal yet, but
the portal has yet to giveth.
Yeah. Most teams. I think all teams actually. All teams are portal taketh. No team has portal giveth. But we lost a few guys. I think it was Matthew Wyckoff.
He was the first.
Yeah, Bobby Angsler, who is one of the backup punters. Who else am I missing?
The DB freshman.
Oh,
Brooklyn?
yeah. Brooklyn Cheek. I think that's it from.
There's another grad transfer. There's like two more grad transfers. Jack Burns. Wait, JT Burns.
Oh, JT Burn. JT Burn. Yep. JT Burn. And then maybe one more. But yeah, those are the guys. And then the biggest one that just hit today, literally a couple hours ago, was wide receiver Isaiah Hunter has entered the portal. So
Eddie's a local guy
from Salinas,
Javid's hometown, or high
Yeah.
school, I should say. I don't know if Javid was actually from Salinas, but wait, no, am I misremembering that? I think that is right.
Is he from Salinas?
He's from Richmond.
Yeah, I thought he was from Richmond.
Okay, could be wrong.
Vallejo. Oh yeah, he's from Vallejo. Hey, he played at Salesian. Oh, that's what it is.
Salesian,
Salesian and Salinas. There you go. That's your mix
There
up.
we go. Yeah, Salinas is way different part.
Yeah, Salinas
middle
is
of nowhere.
down Monterey Bay.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, well, the thing with Isaiah is we don't know if he's like gone, but it's not good.
Yeah. Look, I love Nizia. I love what he's done for us, but I think the one, as we were just talking about, right? the one position that we probably could afford a loss is probably the wide receiver room. Like, I don't want to lose any of these guys, but if we were, I think the talent group that we have in that room is probably the deepest
Yeah.
out
agreed.
of all of the positions on the roster. So that's probably where I'm like it sucks. I actually really like Nizia.
Are
but,
we
like-
losing anybody else like to graduation?
Well, the guys that graduated, right? You want me to run you through the list of guys that walked? Because
Yeah.
the guys that walked is basically the determining factor, right? Whether they come back or not. But let me run you through it. I actually took a picture of every single one that walked at the big game and then posted every single one of them on Instagram and then tagged every single one of them. So I know exactly who the list is. So offensively, it's Maven, Kadarius Callaway, Tron Grizel, Dylan Yemtegard. I think it's JT Byrne or Jeffrey Johnson. I think it's JT Byrne. Trent Ramsey, Will McDonald, Rush Reimer, Chandler Rogers, Nate Racina, TJ Session, Victor Stoffel, and Josh Stovall.
Okay.
So that's on offense.
Does Trond have any eligibility? Oh, he does.
Yeah, he does. He does. He just walked. So who knows? He hasn't said that he's leaving.
Redshirt junior.
Yeah. But yeah, you want me to run you through the defense too?
No, I mean, because I agree. I think it's
It's more the offense, right?
yeah. I think from an offense standpoint,
We just won't know. Like,
you just won't know.
these guys have to like. So
Also,
like, you know,
the problem is it's like a free agency play. It's almost like when the player has the
have
team
leverage.
option,
yeah,
and then they're like they give them the opportunity to match, right?
well, but the grad transfer thing is a little bit harder though, because that means that you have to get into a grad school here. Like that's
Correct.
the asterisk. Where
but
it's
I
not,
mean,
like,
but
really-
I mean, like if I'm Nizea,
yeah,
right, and I'm essentially saying, all right, I had a really good season. I flashed a lot. I, maybe want to, there's two different train of thought, I believe. So one, you can say, I want to see what else is out there, right? Two could just be an evaluation of what am I worth, right? Like, I don't know necessarily what I'm worth if I'm not in the portal. So I can announce my entrance into the portal, and then Cal's NIL collective could respond and say, Isaiah, we'd love to keep you here. Here's X amount to dedicate towards keeping you here, right? Like, I feel like J. Mike Sturdivant had a little bit more of that journey, and it was a little bit more complicated than that. But
yeah. I mean, the only issue, I think the NCAA with the transfer portal did make sure that the university was protected to a certain degree too, and not held hostage to a guy entering the transfer portal, which is the moment you enter the transfer portal, your scholarship at that previous university is forfeit. So they can take that and give it to some other guy. So it's not guaranteed that they'll hold it for you. They could if you're a good enough player and they feel like they can bring you back, but it's not like
so
that
there is actual risk.
Yeah. There 100% is. And even with the NIL stuff, like you go out there and look, let's be totally honest with everyone. I'm sure these guys are getting offers through tertiary people from other universities before they even hit the portal, right? So you're already kind of gauging the market. It's not necessarily like you have to be in the portal to be able to field these offers. I bet you they're coming in already anyways. So, but if we're going to play like that, there is no corruption in that regard and everyone plays by the rules, then, there is a chance where you play the portal thinking that you're of your X amount of money, but then this prior team has already moved on, right? Like they've already moved on. They've already gotten another target in, and they basically took your NIL allotment and gave it to this dude. So like you are playing a little bit of that risk.
Interesting. Well, this will not be the last portal news. It probably won't be the last portal news before the bowl game.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing that everyone's asking is whether Nando's staying or not, and it's like it it weirdly has that same feel of, remember that Jaylen Brown, Ivan Rabier, and then after the season was over, Jaylen, like I think a couple days later, made the announcement with the press conference that he's going to the league. Everyone's like, "Woohoo! Congrats, Jaylen!" But then like Ivan didn't say anything, and we're like, "Is he transferring? Is he staying? Is he leaving?" And then the deadline passed for the NBA draft, and then there was like no announcement, and then it was just he was staying. He just didn't say anything. He's like, he doesn't really have a. There's no reason for a guy to say that he's back, other than to satisfy the curiosity of us fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he's back, he just tells the staff, and then he's back, and he's there. Like he doesn't need to tell like publicly that he's coming back because he's already here. It's not like he's committing here again. He's already on the roster. He's already on scholarship. Like he's good. So everyone's kind of freaking out. Like here's the caveat, like for me and what I saw Saturday, Cal Stanford, they had the axe, paraded around Haas at I think a timeout or at halftime. Nando is out there holding it up with Jack Endries. They're walking it around. Everyone's having a good time. They're waving, taking pictures, so on. Nando's sitting courtside with Rod Benson, just like hanging out the entire game, watching the game, and then and before and at halftime and after the game, standing there and taking pictures with every single person that asked him to. And wearing a Cal shirt and everything. Like that does not look like a guy who's leaving by any means. Like I think if you're a quarterback, a starting quarterback caliber of quarterback like Nando is, you want to hit the portal as soon as possible, because the number of snaps and the number of open guaranteed starting position quarterback spots aren't that many. So you want to be able to go in and secure one with your NIL ask and all of that, and then get to working on the playbook and all of that stuff and get that out there and start ahead. That's why you're seeing like Duke's Malik Murphy just entered the portal today too. Like all the quarterbacks are entering now because they want to be guaranteed the NIL allotment of the starting quarterback and then be the starting quarterback. There's no leverage play if you're waiting to after the bowl game. Like if you're hurt during the bowl game, that's shot. Like, and after the bowl game, there's going to be a lot of guys that have already taken visits and have already committed to places. Like it's not, I don't think it's smart if you're the agent of Nando and you're like, consulting, it's not the smart move to wait 2 weeks after the portal is opened when other guys have already moved and visited and gotten offers, and then to jump into the fray to do that. So just my reading of the tea leaves, I don't think Nando's leaving. He's not acting like a guy who's leaving. He's acting like a guy who wants to be here and wants to be the face of the program next year. So
I'm so scared to say anything. I'm just gonna let you say it.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
But I agree. I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything though.
Yeah.
No need for the double jinx.
Yeah, we don't need the double jinx. Yeah.
Any more thoughts on the portal before we transition?
There's nothing else right now. I will say this. As of right now, there is a lot of talent in the portal. As of right now, there is a lot. There's a lot of wide receivers. There's a lot of defensive linemen. There's a lot of offensive linemen. Blue chip guys that, may not have gotten the snaps at one of the blue bloods, but was a 4-star recruit in 2022 or was a 5-star recruit in 2023 and just didn't break into the starting lineup, and they're in the portal. There are guys to go get. Question is, do we have the finances to make it work to bring in those guys? And would they want to come here with a potential like one-off season looming? So big question. But it did help. I mean, we raised $2.5 million during college game day week. So that plus alpha, which is however much we already had in the war chest, I think we're in a good spot. Next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting. But it's also basketball season, so I'm not really caring about football as much other than next week. And then back to basketball coverage.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the winning programs of the Tedford era were built with 4-star and 3-star players. And we get lost in the 5-star hype. Not that we're pulling any 5-stars in just to go double time on our recruiting stuff. But that is my big thing is if you can go out and get a bunch of 4-star guys and get good coaches that can coach those players up, we're in a good spot. Okay. Let's quickly do players of the season. Go ahead, Rob. 1 offense, 1 defense, and then we'll close out.
I mean, are we going to double up or are we going to pick different?
I don't know. Well, you'll go first, so that'll put me in a tougher position if you take my players.
Offensively, it's easy. I think it's Jack Endries. Like, for me, at least. I guess that means you're going to go Nando. But I think Jack Endries has given us production from the tight end position that we've been wanting for years. And he's just exploded like last season and then on to this season. I still remember, Jesse's not going to listen to this, but I still remember the first either spring camp or fall camp that Jesse and I were sitting in the stands and Jack Endries was working with the third team. And I was like, who is that kid? And Jesse looked at me and he goes, dude, that kid is an absolute baller. He is going to play on this team. And it was Jack Endries, the walk-on at that point. So, and then he's turned into this. So, like, I'm so happy for him. I see his dad basically at every home game, one of the nicest men in the world. And, you know, of course, we connect because his name's Robert, and I'm Robert by legal name as well. So, absolutely great family. The family's so nice. His mom's so nice, too. Absolutely, just so sweet. And so, yeah, I just being able to root for him, seeing him succeed, seeing his ability improve and his stats improve to put him on the map for an NFL, you know, draft board, like, is incredible. And so I can't wait for him next year, fingers crossed, and then also, you know, NFL hopefully afterwards.
I mean, when you're talking about him being best friends and roommates with Nando, having the opportunity for both of them coming back, that's exciting. I love that pick. Defense,
I'm gonna go. My MVP pick is kind of gonna be like an unsung hero because I feel like I know who you're gonna pick. So I'm gonna go with Teddy Buchanan. I did not think Teddy was going to have the season that he did. He thoroughly surprised me, and I am very happy that I was surprised. He's awesome. I have a picture of him from the Stanford basketball game because he's sitting on the bench, like right behind the TV commentators, and he had the shirt on, which you can buy, that says 98 yards with my boys. And so he was wearing the shirt, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey Teddy, can I see the shirt?" And he like stands up to show me the shirt, and he's like, "Actually, wait." And he like straightens out his shirt, and then he holds up his like 2 shoulder parts of the shirt to like showcase what it said. So I got a picture of that and I put it up on Twitter. It did some good numbers, but I think that's just the type of guy he is. He's like he like fully embraced being like a Cal Bear, you know, even if it was just for a year. Yeah. And I think he's going to be very, very good in the NFL. So I was very happy with how he did this year. Absolutely stellar.
Look at you. You had a personal session with Jeremiah Wilkinson.
I did. We can talk about that at the end.
Okay. Mine will be very easy.
Okay.
As I search for this photo that I won't be able to find with no social. Number 1, Nando on offense.
Yep.
Gotta go. Everybody was like, why aren't you picking Nando as your player of the week? I was saving him for the player of the year. Duh. 98 yards with my boys. That'll go down. That'll never be forgotten.
That's a moment in Cal history.
It's a moment in Cal history. Then defensively, yeah, same position group. I think Cade Uluwave, his absence was felt immensely. And sometimes I'm always shocked by the MVP awards that don't necessarily consider how much worse a team looks once that player is gone.
I said it's your phone.
Oh, thank you. Who knows where that is?
Who knows where your phone is?
But yeah,
Okay. What
those
about
are my
the
two.
defense? Oh, yeah. I guess you said your defense too. Still not over. We still got one more game.
Yeah, and so as we look ahead, we have one more game left against UNLV.
Yep.
A retread hire by the name of Barry Odom has completely turned that program around. And their starting quarterback was like, y'all didn't pay my NIL money. Peace.
Yeah.
I'm out in the middle of the season. They made it to the Mountain West Championship game. Lost to Boise State. In what was actually decently close game.
Competitive, yeah.
But it does look like Odom's gone. He's gone to Purdue, so that's head coach out. I think their offensive coordinator is also out.
Brandon Marion looks like he's out. I think he's removed all the UNLV stuff off of his socials, so that looks like he's out.
So Marion,
who knows?
So like what are we getting? You know,
who's coaching that team?
That's I do not know. And I will say the way we looked against Mountain West teams this year, it does give me a glimmer of hope that perhaps this could be a bowl that we win.
Just a fun blowout bowl.
I mean, but like maybe 10-point win would be great. It certainly wouldn't be a good look if we kept our head coach and our entire staff and our starting quarterback and our starting tight end and potentially running back and got blown out by a team that didn't have a head coach and an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, they have the slot machine as their I think it's their turnover thing, or when they score on the sideline. I could just imagine that being their play caller. Before they go out, they pull the slot machine. They're like, all right, we're running a zone read to the right. All right, zone read to the right. Zone read to the right.
At that point, just have somebody call it in from a video game set.
Yeah. What movie was that? There was an old movie where he was like, Coach, what's the play? And he's like, I don't know. And he looks over and it's a kid with a TV and an Xbox, and he's clicking the Ask Madden button. And he's pitch left.
Yeah.
Pitch left.
I formation, run to the left. So
But yeah,
that's
the LA Bowl is
Wednesday, 6:00.
Wednesday, 6:00 on ESPN, hosted by Rob Gronkowski
SoFi.
at SoFi. My first time at SoFi.
Wow.
Yeah.
As a Chargers fan, nonetheless.
As a Chargers fan, nonetheless. And the crazier part is that the Chargers play the Broncos on Thursday night. It got flexed into Thursday a couple weeks ago. So they're playing it at SoFi Thursday night. So
Are you going back to back?
Yeah, so I'm going to fly in on Tuesday. I'm flying back out on Friday. I'm like, I should probably go to the game. I've never been to a Chargers game before in my entire fandom, so this will be my first one, and I'm pretty sure. And then I'm gonna end up going to a game where we lose to Bo Nix. So this is all within my Cal fandom. I've lost to Bo Nix as a Cal fan. I'm gonna lose to Bo Nix as a Chargers fan.
Dude, you better not, because I'm gonna start the Chargers defense against the Broncos.
Dude, Bo Nix is one of the hottest quarterbacks in fantasy right now.
I know, but you know what, Harbaugh.
Our defense is we're effed right now. We just don't have bodies. But anyways,
that is devastating news.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun time. Hosted by Gronk, so Gronk's going to be around. I think that's going to be super cool. I've already submitted press credentials to be on the field taking pictures, so it could be very interesting.
Yes, it will be. Yeah. Sorry, having a dog interruption moment here.
Yeah, I see the dog.
Well, that's it, Rob. That's our last regular season podcast.
We'll have one after the bowl.
2024.
Not 2024.
Yeah, no, it's the last regular season.
Oh, regular. Oh, yeah, it is regular season. We'll have one postseason. We'll have a postseason wrap up after the bowl game, but with other news that might ensue.
Hopefully, good news.
Yeah, hopefully with some good news. But yeah, that's football season. It's basketball season now, Andy. It's all about the shooty hoops.
I'm ready. I'm excited. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get out there. But yes, I can't wait. I'm thinking 2 games this year. 2.
2?
Yes, 2.
There's a fun schedule out there. I mean, the thing for us is like, at least the guys that are going to the LA Bowl, like Wednesday is the LA Bowl, and then Cal plays in the San Jose Invitational in basketball on Saturday. So like they're playing at SAP Center. It's a doubleheader with Oregon Stanford as the game 1, and then Cal San Diego State as game 2. So that's why I think most of us are flying back like on Thursday or Friday, so we're able to make that. But it'll be a fun time. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm very much excited. Do you have a prediction for UNLV? Score prediction before we close it?
31-10.
31-10. Okay.
24-10.
Ooh, that's a little dicey.
24-13.
Ooh, that's getting real dicey.
I'll take any of those 3.
I'm going 35-10.
Holy goodness.
35-10. We're going to have a fun time. All right. Well, that wraps it up for us here on the Golden Bear Cast. And as always, you can find us on Twitter at Golden Bear Cast. You can find us on Blue Sky at Golden Bear Cast. You can find us on all of your other social platforms to listen to podcasts, to listen to our podcast. You can also read all our written stuff at rightforcalifornia.com. And also, you can email us, goldenbearcast@gmail.com. And that's it for this week's episode of the Golden Bear Cast. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death. But you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.